What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. It is Will here with From Screen to Shelf, and I am joined by Nick.
Hey guys, how's it going?
And Nick is one of our community members. He's been a member of our Discord server for quite some time now. Nick, how long has it been? When do you know when you joined the server, by the way?
Like one and a
I wa
half, 2 years ago.
I
It's
wanna
been
say 2 years ago. You've
something
been
like
in
that.
there quite a while.
It's been a hot minute. Yeah, it's been a while. I've been in there.
Yeah. But Nick is here. We got somewhat of a, I don't know if you would call it a treat, but I think it's gonna be an interesting video.
Mm.
Um, because Nick is a diehard. Would you say diehard?
I
Is
mean, I
that
don't know
is that
about
the right word?
Die Hard. It's not my
Yeah,
favorite of the franchise.
but you're a fan.
I'm a big fan. Yeah, big fan.
Okay. So Nick is here to talk about, and the reason for this video is he was always in the server talking about how Jason Goes to Hell was peak cinema.
Yeah.
One of the best movies he's ever seen. Better than every other movie in the
Yeah.
franchise.
Mm.
Busting everybody up about how fantastic of a movie Jason Goes to Hell is. But at the end of the day, genuinely, you are a fan of the movie. So we
Yeah.
titled the video In Defense of Jason Goes to Hell because I want you to kind of make your case for our viewers out there as to why you like this movie. I mean, it's gotten a lot of flack from people in the Friday the 13th community. It's up there with, as entertaining as Jason X is. I think Jason X gets a lot of shit from people. This movie
Yeah.
does too.
I think this is
Um,
the lowest
I,
rated one.
I think, yeah, I think this one it probably gets, I don't want to say it gets hate, but like it definitely gets the most, like, just, I don't know.
Mm.
I think people consider this to be probably the weirdest movie in the whole franchise.
Yeah, for sure.
And as the franchise kind of moves on, and for those of you that are interested, we did a video and have other videos on the profile on the channel discussing 1 through 4, 5 through 8. We're going through the whole franchise, but this video in particular, I wanted to do this with you because I know that you are, as I said, a genuine fan of this movie. I'd like to hear your opinion. I think your take on it is pretty interesting. So I wanted to share that with our viewers and everyone else on the channel here. So yeah, Nick, let's get right into it. Well, let me ask you this first. When did you first see this movie? Like, was it the
Um,
first Friday the 13th movie that
no,
you had
no.
seen, or was it like what, in what order? Like, I guess for everybody watching, talk about briefly when you first got into the franchise, what the first movie was that you saw, and how you got to Jason Goes to Hell.
Yeah, so for sure. So I kinda got into Friday the 13th when I was getting into horror at, like, 12, 13. I was reading a lot of Stephen King books and then started watching some movies, and,
Hmm.
I kind of went through this franchise. I don't know, the same way I went through Halloween and Nightmare, which was just started at 1, release order to the newest one,
Yeah.
which at the time, the newest one. I think this was after I started Halloween, but before I started Nightmare on Elm Street. So yeah, I watched the first Friday the 13th and then pretty much just straight through till the most recent one, the remake.
Hmm.
Um, when I had watched these, because I'm on the younger side, like the internet was a thing. So like going into every movie, I had known like the fan consensus on it, like
Hmm.
before I had seen the movie in a sense. So like
Okay.
when I went to pop in Jason Goes to Hell, I was really like, "Oh boy, this is not going to be good. This is going to be a hard watch." And like I genuinely like the first time I watched it, I was like, that really wasn't that bad. Like I was
Hmm.
confused by like why everyone hated it so much, and just like as I would watch it more and more, I just found that like I liked it more. This movie to me is just so much fun.
Hmm.
It's like schlocky Evil Dead type fun, which it doesn't work for everyone, but that works for me with these movies because Evil
Hmm.
Dead is a big franchise that I love. So yeah,
Yeah.
that was like when I got into them was just like, this really isn't that bad. And like each time I've watched it, I sort of liked it a little bit more. So that's about it. Yeah, for that.
Okay. Yeah, that's an interesting. Well, it's funny you mentioned Evil Dead because there's we'll get into it in a bit, but
Yeah.
there's a little Easter egg in this movie that I'm sure you know what I'm talking about that
Yep.
that
Yeah.
references Evil Dead, and we'll get into that when we get to that point. But yeah, with me, I think I don't know if I saw this after Jason X or prior to. I think it was probably after I had seen Jason X because when I was growing up, it was probably around the time of, I want to say, it was probably middle school or like right
Mhm.
before I got into high school. Like Scream was pretty big around that time. The Scream movies were like a hot topic amongst like my friend group. It was between Scream and Saw because Scream was still pretty popular at the time. And Saw, I think by like 2003 or 2004, like the first Saw movie was just coming out. So Jigsaw
Mhm.
was like big with a lot of people. And that was around the time I was in high school. But yeah, I had seen Jason X, and Jason X was just like wild. Like it was just, I
Yeah.
mean, very bad, but like
Mhm.
incredibly entertaining. I don't think I had seen Jason Goes to Hell. By that point in time, I had probably seen most of the films in the franchise, other than Jason Goes to Hell for whatever reason. And it wasn't because I was avoiding it in particularly. It was just I just happened to have. It's just the one film that I think at that point in time I'd happened to have missed. Um, so, yeah, when I watched it, I mean, granted, I was much younger, but I remember watching it the first time and just being, I guess you could say, confused. Like, I didn't hate it. I was just really confused as to what was going on because, taking place after the eighth film, like, which is Jason Takes Manhattan, I was trying to piece everything together and figure out what the hell was going on with this movie. But
That's one of the things. It's like this movie doesn't explain, like, how Jason survived
yeah,
the ending of Jason Takes
it's
Manhattan. It's just
very, very little. Yeah, and that's the thing. There's almost no explanation.
like,
But
"Fuck you, he did."
yeah, and that's really what it felt like, right? But I want to get into it. Let's get into. I mean, we'll go over like a brief synopsis before we get into the discussion. But essentially, I kind of have some notes here because I did watch it again. I watched the unrated cut. I don't know if that's the cut that you
That
watched
is,
because
yeah,
there's
that's exclusively the cut that I watch. My eyes
okay.
have not seen the theatrical
And
version.
we both watched the Blu-ray version from Scream Factory. I believe you
Yes,
have the box set as
I
well. We
do, yes.
both have that box set.
Right over there, yeah. It's
Awesome. Yeah,
right on
so
the shelf,
we know for a fact that we watched the
for
same
sure, yeah.
exact cut, um same company, Scream Factory. So
Yep.
pretty much shot for shot there. So yeah, I mean, essentially, it opens up with like your typical, at this point, like stereotypical, like Friday the 13th style, what you would call like a Friday the 13th style opening, right? You have like this chick that's she ends up
Mhm.
going to this cabin, it's dark, you don't know where it is. It's in the middle of the woods. And she ends up turning out to be an FBI agent luring Jason, so to speak, into this ambush, which, I'd love to talk about that. I want your thoughts on that in a second. But essentially what happens is he gets lured into this ambush. He gets he gets shot to hell. Okay. It's like a straight up firing squad.
Yep,
And then this is the part that I didn't remember correctly, and we'll talk about it. But he ends up getting blown into pieces, essentially, literally
yep,
blown into pieces. And what happens is they bring him back to the coroner, and this coroner's examining him, and it turns out that the heart or his heart is still parts of him are still alive. His heart being one of those parts. It starts beating. Some weird shit happens with the coroner. I want you to
yep.
comment on that also because like I still can't figure that out. I'm still trying to piece that together. But essentially, what happens is Jason's essence, I guess, the essence of evil, right, for lack of a better word, is able to travel from Jason's body and inhabit other people as vessels, so to speak, right?
Yeah.
So he's transferring from body to body as the film goes on. And there's a few different rules, so to speak, that are
Mhm.
established, as the film progresses, if I may. But one of them is he essentially can only be killed by someone who's related directly to him. And we're going to get into all that, but that's essentially the gist of the movie. So now that we got the mostly the plot out of the way, I want you to talk about the opening. What did you think of that opening?
So
Because
yeah.
as entertaining as it was, I was just like, what the fuck?
That's
what
gotta
what
say,
is this?
that was my reaction to the opening when I first
Yeah.
saw it. I was literally like, "What in the fuck?" Like, this is how I
Mm,
thought the movie would, like, end in the weird way, like,
right.
it feels like how you would end the movie with him
Mm,
getting shot to shit. It also and it does this a couple times in the movie. It feels like almost like a parody of itself, where it's like
Mhm.
the opening is so like this girl goes to the cabin in the woods and then she strips and she's running around naked and it's like
Oh,
it
yeah.
feels like almost like it's
You gotta
parodying.
have that, you gotta have that gratuitous nudity
Oh, you
in
got it.
there to
This
really
is
make it work. Yeah.
this is probably the most gratuitous one in the franchise in
Mm.
terms of like that stuff, but this feels like it's parodying the franchise, and it does this later with the oh, when the one guy, I forget his name. I just watched this yesterday. Spencer
The guy with the glasses?
glasses, yeah, our lead
Yeah, I think his name is Steven.
Steven, yeah, that's
I
it.
could be wrong, though. You might be right, though. Maybe it is Spencer. He
Something with an
seems like he would be a Spencer or a Steven.
He looks spent. When he's like
It's one of those.
when he's driving, he picks up the girls and they're like, "Oh, we're gonna go do drugs and have premarital sex because Jason's not
Yeah,
around,
yeah,
so we're gonna be a-okay." Like it's
yeah.
almost like it's so Friday the 13th. It feels like it's like making a joke of itself. But this opening, it's like when you
Mm,
watch this for the first time, it really I think you'd be lying if you said you didn't get really just interested in the film because that's such a way to open this movie is just like blowing
yeah,
up your icon. And something I forgot about in the opening, and I'm sure I'm going to mention him, is Creighton Duke is just like there's this bounty hunter that's like kind of important in the movie. And
yeah.
he's sitting there watching Jason get shot to shit. And he's going like, I don't think so. It's like, what the fuck do you
Yeah,
mean? Like,
he's like it's
he's
so
just
weird,
sitting
right?
there with
It's
the
like
binoculars, like,
it's
I don't
so
think
fucking
so.
weird.
And it's like, who the
Yeah.
fuck are you? Where did you
And
come from?
he's kinda it's funny because he's kinda giving us, like, his
Mhm.
commentary on, like, on what's happening
Yeah,
anyway. It's such
he's
a
like
weird and he's played by, Steven Williams, who, for those of you I remember him from, he played I think he was Mr. X on The X-Files for,
oh,
like,
really?
a couple seasons, yeah.
Not an X-Files person.
Yeah, big X-Files fan.
Mhm.
So, and I used to watch the X-Files when I was a kid, like at my grandparents' house after school, like in fucking like in like elementary school. Like that would like I would go home and the X-Files would be on TV. And
Right,
I
here, kid.
just remember, I don't know how I remember, but like when I saw this movie, I was like, holy shit, that's the dude
Mhm.
from the X-Files. But anyway, that's Stephen Williams. That's just how I remember him. But
His character is
yeah,
just so
Creighton Duke.
fun in this movie because it's like it takes you, like, forever to figure out, like, what this dude's deal is, and he's just kinda, like,
Mm.
always in the background of events going like, "I don't think so," or like, that's not gonna work, he's still gonna come back."
Yeah, yeah.
It's just like the whole movie, you're just like, "Dude, what is your deal? Like, who
I
is
know.
this guy?" And
I
I
mean, some
believe
of his dialogue is pretty it's funny, like, it's
he's
corny, but
funny.
it's pretty
Eh,
funny too. I mean,
I find him
he
funny, I
just
think he's
I
entertaining.
think he I think he has a lot of fun with it, man.
Mm.
He seems like he was having fun with the role,
I
hopefully.
mean, it looks like most of the actors in this movie were having fun because they probably read the script. They're probably like, "What is this movie?" And
Mm,
that's, like, what I like about it is, like, all the characters, like I think the characters in this are just, like, so entertaining because they're
mm,
all none of them are normal. They're all, like,
yeah,
they all have, like, these, like, weird little quirks or, like, they're, like,
mm,
just not a normal person that it's fun to follow these guys around because it's just how odd they all are. Like, the
yeah.
fat diner owner who's always screaming at everyone, but
Oh my god,
she's
yeah,
calling
so
her husband,
obnoxious.
like,
Yeah,
Pookie Bear, and she's always, like, berating everyone else. Like, so
yeah,
Creighton's a highlight. I like Steven. Steven's, like, a little badass in this movie. He's,
yeah,
like his immediate reaction in any situation is just to start, like, throwing hands with
yeah.
whatever threat is presented to him, which I think is
Yeah, I
just
noticed, like,
it's pretty
when
fun.
who's the I think she ends up getting I don't well, at this point, if people haven't seen this, I mean, spoilers, I
Yeah,
think
for
Diane is
a
her name
40-year-old movie? Yeah,
in the
spoilers.
movie. Yeah, yeah, right, Diane,
The one that dies and then the
the
Jason
one yeah,
worm.
she works at the diner. I know the actress's name is Erin Gray.
Mhm.
She was, like, the blonde chick in, like, that, in Buck Rogers, but I don't remember her last name. I think her name's Diane in the movie. I might be wrong, but or
The,
Diane or Diana.
the diner worker that dies pretty early into it.
Yeah, she
Yeah,
gets killed. I remember there's one scene where, like, I think the either the no, I'm misremembering, but she gets attacked and Steven shows up. He's just starts
he
throwing like, he
immediately
just,
just
like,
starts
punches
throwing
the other
hands,
dude.
like, doesn't question anything, and I love
Yeah.
that's his reaction to everything is just to start fighting whatever's in front of him. which I
But
think
the opening though, to follow up on
Mhm.
that, to what you said, yeah, I mean, it definitely is one of those openings where you're just like, "What? Like, what? Like, now what are they gonna do?" You know?
Yeah,
And it's like,
exactly.
okay.
With that
So, I mean, it
coroner, with the I'm sorry, with
yeah,
the coroner too, you mentioned it, I still have no idea what the fuck that was. He's,
right.
like, dissecting, like, the little bits of Jason, and he's talking, and the heart starts beating, and he's like, "Well, time to eat this shit." Like, I
And
guess it's
that's
Jason's evil essence calling out to him, but, like,
yeah. That's the only way I could explain it.
The rules for how the Jason possession are just all over the place with this movie,
Yeah. Well,
and it's
that's really where I think my issue with it lies. I mean, despite the fact, I mean, and that, I mean, and I'll just put like, so I'll kind of give you my reasoning for why I just can't, like, even watching it again, I'm
Mhm.
still like, I mean, it's entertaining at times. It's
Yeah,
definitely entertaining. Like, you can definitely have a lot of fun with it. And to be completely honest, like, I'll tell you what I like about it, okay?
alright,
Because I
yeah.
always try to give everything credit where credit's due. I think that as far as if you're going into this and not expecting it to be anything like any of the other Friday the 13th movies, because unfortunately, like, that's what this movie suffers from, is because it veers pretty far off the beaten path as far as what people have come to know Jason as.
Yeah,
You know what I
especially
mean? And
with 7 and 8, like, being just, like,
exactly.
the most, like, Jason-y Jason movies you could think of
Right.
right before this.
Yeah, exactly. So that, and that's the thing. I think 7 and 8 were kinda, I mean, 8 even was, even though 8 is a little ridiculous at times, and, like, even the setting
Mm,
is ridiculous. I mean, 8's become kind of a fan favorite just because in 8, Jason was full on Jason.
yeah,
Like, it's
he's
one of the few movies in the franchise that was kinda like, I mean, I would call it, or some people would say it's kinda like a love letter, to the character, right? So,
Mhm,
to follow up 7 and 8 with this, and it's like, okay, you're gonna then take that character and just completely, literally, you know,
yeah,
eviscerate, what people have come to know him as, uh, to this whole, like, possession thing. It's just weird, but,
mhm.
let me get into what I like about it. I think the practical effects are actually, there's some really good
Oh, for sure, yeah.
practical effects in this
This has
movie.
got some fantastic gore. It's
The
like
scene where, I forget what character it is, but it's, I don't know if he's one of the cops or the security guard. He's kinda like the balding
mm,
guy that's, like, middle-aged, and he has, like, the black, like, like, sagging eyes, and
yeah,
he attacks Diane in the house,
mhm.
and that's when Steven punches him, and then there's a scene where he transfers the snake thing or the
Oh,
worm thing, whatever
where
you
he's,
wanna
like,
call that.
melting on the
He's
floor.
melting. I thought
Yeah,
that was cool, man.
that
Like, that
effect
was
is
a really cool death, you
that
know?
feels like
So,
Hellraiser. That's like some Frank Cotton
yeah.
type stuff.
Some decent kills in this movie too. I mean, one of my favorites is they take, like, the metal fence rod, and when the couple is when they're having sex in the tent
Mm. Oh, and
closer to the beginning of the
he
film in the
rips her up in
woods,
half.
just rips her in half. That was really cool. Some really
Yeah,
great practical effects there. So yeah, I mean, there's definitely fun to be had with this movie. I just think, other than that, I mean, the soundtrack got a little obnoxious for me,
mhm.
especially in the beginning, where it's like everything that happens is just intercut with, like, the same strings or the
Yeah,
chords, whatever you want to call them. And it eventually got to the point where it was kind of like, I don't know, I just felt like it was interfering with, like, me just trying to settle into the movie, right? So
mhm,
the music cues were kind of weird in the beginning. Not so
it
much with the
is.
rest of the movie, but in the beginning, it just took me a little longer to kind of get get ingrained in everything. But
Mhm.
yeah, other than that, man, I mean, I don't know. Like, the beginning is still so weird for me. And I was gonna say, when we were talking before we recorded, I misremembered that opening. I thought
Yeah.
that one of the SWAT guys fired a rocket launcher at him. That wasn't the case, dude. It's a fucking it's like an airstrike or
Yeah,
something that comes down and blows him up.
they call him like a Call of Duty airstrike to blow
It's
up
so
Jason.
ridiculous.
I would have liked some explanation as to how
Yeah,
Jason's become like an FBI level threat all of a
right.
sudden, just out of completely nowhere.
Yeah, but that's what I like about it. I mean, everything else is kinda lackluster for me. I think the main thing that takes me out of it is just, and here, and this might just be me too, but I think, there's people out there that probably agree. I had the same problem with part 5, right? I didn't like part 5 because it wasn't Jason. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? So for me, even though it's supposedly the essence of Jason, like I'm somebody who considers myself, I mean, like with Halloween, I'm the same way. Like there's certain things that I think you just shouldn't do with Michael. And I'd probably argue that there's people out there that say the same thing about Freddy and Leatherface, whatever your favorite, slasher villain is, so to speak. I just think for me, this film, it's very far removed from what Jason, should be. If you're going to do Jason, like you should do him the right way. And like for me, I'm just one of those people that kind of sees him a certain way, and it's hard for me to kind of see him outside of that. Right. And that's a personal thing. You obviously like this movie, and I love the fact that you're a fan of it, and that's
Mhm.
why I'd love to hear your opinions on it, someone like you, just to get that opposite, like complete 180 perspective. But I think for me, ultimately, it just falls short because it's so out there. I mean, I got to give them credit for like trying to do something different. Like I'm always one to say, even
Mhm.
though I don't like something, I appreciate the fact that somebody had the balls to like try this. Um, Even though they might have very well known at the time, like it's probably gonna, piss some people off, you never know. So I respect them for at least trying to like be like weird and out there, because this movie is definitely, like I said, I think it's one of the weirdest Friday the 13th movies. It's
I
probably the
definitely say
weirdest.
definitely it's up there with part like 5 in my opinion of just or like
Mm,
Jason X with just like how weird and out there this movie is. But that's like so the
yeah.
director he kind of had like an impossible task because like he wanted to wrap up Jason Friday the 13th, but like as a franchise, like there's
Mm,
no overarching mythology to Friday the 13th. Shit just kind of happens. So it's like he had to
right.
kind of come up with something to like, oh, let me like somehow to tie this all together to end it. And it's like I like what he came up with. Like every every slasher icon, I should say, needs a decrepit house. So the fact that it took us this long to get the Voorhees house, like even though we did get
Mm,
it, it's much appreciated that we got it because like every icon needs it. But I like that he was so adamant with what he wanted to do with this movie because
yeah.
I'm Friday the 13th, I love it, but it's probably out of the big 3 slashers, it's definitely my least favorite. So I don't
Mm,
feel like a huge particular attachment towards Jason, like more so that I would Michael or even Freddy. Freddy's slowly becoming my favorite
yeah.
as time goes on, but that's beside the point. But that's why I think this is so fun because like 6 through 8, it's like those were probably I'd say like the golden years where it's like they knew
Mm,
what they had with Jason. They were just shoving Jason in like as much of the movie as they could. So this was sort of like after Friday the 13th was, I guess, fallen off a little bit.
yeah.
So like the fact that the director went with something so different is something that I is just a lot of the reason why I really like this because he stuck to his guns. He was like, no, I'm gonna do what I did. And I was listening to this interview with the director, Adam, I think his name is whatever.
Good question. I was actually going to ask you. Yeah, Adam Marcus, I think, is the
Marcus,
director's name.
Adam Marcus, yeah. Interesting
And
guy.
he was also credited as a writer as well. So he co-wrote it. I think he had a couple other writers with him, but yeah, writer director.
Well,
So
he was very passionate about this, and like from seeing like a clip or some type of clip or interview, he was talking about how like I think this was post the movie coming out. He was talking
okay.
about how fans were saying that this was the one where things got weird, and he was
Mm,
arguing, which I thoroughly agree with, that like things had been weird in this franchise since like pretty much since the beginning. You know, you have zombie Jason getting Frankenstein back to life somehow, and
yeah.
He fights like Carrie in the next movie, and he's like he swims from Crystal Lake
Part 7, yeah.
onto a boat into New York City. And like even like in the earlier movies, like in part 2, it's like he's this little hermit dude who like has his mother's head somehow in his little
Mm,
shack, and he runs around with like a sack. So he was saying, which I agree with, it's like people say that this was the movie where things went off the rails. And it's like I'd say that pretty much since the first one, this franchise has never been on the rails. And that's
yeah.
part of why I like this so much is because of just how fun it is and how out there it
Mm,
is. From like 6, 7, and 8 to me are just like I like 6, but 7 and 8 are just like so nothing burgers, like just
mm,
kind of boring, mindless, goreless, like slasher, just generic slasher stuff. To see this thing which is just so out there from anything else in this franchise. It's
Yeah.
really, really like it. Now, I mentioned it being, it feels very much like an Evil Dead movie in a sense
Hmm.
with like the style of gore. It's a lot more like body horror type elements with like
Yeah,
the
I'd agree with that. There's like that melting man scene
Mhm.
reminded me of a movie. Well, it reminded me of there's a Vinegar Syndrome. Vinegar Syndrome put the movie out. It's called The Incredible Melting Man. Actually, it's very similar to that. It
Mhm.
reminded me of that movie, but it also reminded me of a movie called Society, which is
Yes,
pretty
I know
cool.
about that. I know about it.
But yeah, Evil Dead, like even from the beginning, like when the coroner's eating the heart, I forget the coroner's name. I don't know if it's mentioned in the movies or not. I don't know
I
if you
don't
happen to
think
know,
it is.
but
I don't think it is. I think he's just kind of referred to as like this coroner.
yeah, but like when he's eating that heart and he starts choking and like vomiting up like the black liquid,
Yeah,
like
like
yeah,
there's a
that
lot of like
very
gore
Evil Dead,
a lot of
very
gore that's
Evil
not
Dead style. Yeah.
well, like inhabits the police officer towards the end, and probably
Mm,
my favorite scenes in the movie are like the police station and then the diner like battle where they're shooting at
yeah.
him, and he's not spewing blood, he's spewing like black like substance, which
Yeah.
feels very very different. It feels very Evil Dead to me,
Yeah.
and apparently the director was a big fan of Evil Dead because, as you had
Yeah.
alluded to, the Necronomicon is in the Jason
Yeah,
house.
it's just chilling in Jason's
It is
house on
just
the
chilling.
fucking on the mantle over there.
I bel
What's his name? Steven. He's like walking through the
It's
house.
like,
He's like, "Oh, look at
"Oh, I saw
this."
this in a movie once."
Yeah, no,
But,
it's just something he likes to read in his spare time when he's
yeah,
not
I guess
stalking campers.
I
Yeah.
think Adam, the director, has said that this means that, Jason's a Deadite and that this is
Yeah,
a s
hasn't he been quoted like saying
I
that
think
in an
he
interview or something?
I
Because I've
think
heard that
he
a couple
I've heard
times.
that people and I know some people agree that Jason's a like, he is a Deadite and this whole franchise is just like a little Evil Dead spin-off in a way. I
Yeah,
disagree
that's an
with that.
interesting way to look at it for
I
sure.
definitely don't agree with that. I mean, Deadites have no rules, but, like, the 2 rules that they do have, Jason
Mm.
never really follows in the
Yeah,
movies.
exactly.
Like, he
Yeah.
can't do the voice or whatever, but I don't I think that was just a fun reference, but just, like, that reference and how Evil Dead this feels with,
Mm.
like, this different style of gore and violence, it's like it's never repeated in the franchise in the subsequent, like, entries that we get. It's just, like, as a big Evil Dead fan, I really enjoyed, like, just the schlocky fun of this. I think this movie really does know what it is. I knew the director. I think he knows what he was making for
Mm.
sure, and I think the movie just revels in being this, like, don't really take us super seriously"
Yeah.
type of movie where it's like, we're different, and it's definitely not something that most people obviously like. I would say that, like, on a first watch, most people definitely don't like this movie, especially if
Yeah.
they really, really like the character of Jason to see him just, like, pretty much picked apart and, like, reduced to, like Jason, like, with the mask is barely in this movie. He's in this in the beginning, the
Yeah.
end, and there's, like, a couple glimpses of him in, like, mirrors and stuff.
Yeah, when they're walking in front of mirrors and stuff, you kinda
Which
see him, yeah.
like, how the fuck does that whatever. But,
Well,
like
that's yeah, that's another thing I wanted to ask you what you think of that. But, well, the other thing I wanna point out real quick, but, um, there are neat aspects to this movie, like you were talking about. I mean, I just wish it wasn't kinda marred by the rest of the movie, but, like, another Easter egg is I don't know if you noticed it, but I think it's in the basement of the Voorhees house. It's there's a crate from Creepshow.
Yeah, I saw that on the
And
newest
that's down
watch.
there too. So there's a
I
few different Easter eggs
I'd
in
always
the
seen that
Voorhees
and
house.
not really known what that was, but on the most recent
Yeah.
watch, I caught that and I was like, "Oh, hey, that's
Yeah, it's
pretty
pretty
neat."
cool. Pretty cool.
Yeah,
So yeah, it's always fun to see that kind of stuff. And
mhm,
like, I don't know, you don't always see that in movies to that degree. Like there's
yeah,
definitely Easter eggs and like homages, so to speak, for lack of a better word, in some of these movies, but to legitimately have like the Necronomicon, sitting on a table or desk or whatever it was, and then downstairs in the basement you got the fucking you got the crate from Creepshow. It's like, what are they trying to tell us here? It's just an odd. I mean, I guess some people would say it's an odd choice, but I mean, I thought it was a neat little Easter egg.
I mean,
Um,
to me, it just shows how much the director is a fan of
yeah,
horror, like, how much he
right, right.
loves like, people have I know people said this, like, "Oh, this guy hates this franchise." I think it's like, no, when you watch it, you can clearly see just, like, his love for just this type of horror, this like schlocky, ultra
Yeah.
violent, like almost B movie type horror. This feels in a sense almost like a sort of higher budget B movie.
Yeah.
I don't know how fair that is to say, but this definitely feels like that to
Yeah, I
me
could
a little
see
bit.
that. Yeah, I could see that. I mean, it's definitely it's not a traditional like slasher by any means.
Mhm.
It's kind of weird, if you look at it, I guess like some people would I don't know if I would call it like a possession film, but I mean technically
I
these characters that are walking around are they're essentially empty vessels that Jason is inhabiting. You know what I
I
mean?
mean,
So it's kind of a weird approach.
I guess you could consider it a possession movie. I mean, I
Yeah.
consider possession more like ghosts and not like the weird little worm things. And
Right.
another thing I wanted to mention is towards the end of the movie, when the dude that's possessed gets his throat slit
Mm.
and like the Jason worm crawls out of his throat,
Oh,
that
yeah,
effect is
that was a good one. Yeah, that
disgusting.
was another
That
good
is
one. Yeah.
vile. That effect is
Yeah.
absolutely disgusting to watch.
Yeah.
Even still, like I cringe at that a little bit because it's just like how gross like
No, it
that
is gross. And
that
that's the
looks
thing,
is.
man. Like I told you before, that's the one if I were to sell this movie to somebody, if they were to be like, "Well, why do I need to watch this?" It'd be like, "Well, you know what? If there's one takeaway, it would be for me anyway, like the amazing work on the practical effects cuz like some of them are pretty convincing. Like that
Most
one in
of
particular
that's
grossed
pretty
me out.
nasty.
Yeah.
It's
But
definitely
like, so
nasty.
I want, so essentially, like, if you're gonna pitch this movie to somebody, right? Because that's, we've talked about it a little bit here. Like, I want you to kind of pitch this movie to somebody. Like, if someone's watching this right now, like, what would you say are like the biggest selling points to Jason Goes to Hell? Like, even for somebody that's watched it before and might not want to give it another chance, like, what would you say to somebody, that in your opinion would make it worth a second watch or make it or what would make it worth checking out again?
Yeah, I mean, I would say definitely for people who have not seen this movie, it's just like but who are going through the franchise and are getting to Jason Goes to Hell. I would definitely say like, hey, like everything you've seen in this franchise, like detach like any attachment you might have to that and just like sit back and let this movie just entertain you because I feel like that's the ultimate end goal of this more so than anything is just to be entertaining. Like it's
Hmm.
so fun. I'm never bored in this movie. Like even the downtime is boring. I'm sorry, is not boring with all the like weird and wacky like characters we have running around. So I would definitely say just like sort of like not like detach, but like
Hmm.
not invest yourself as much in your love for Jason the character in this movie and just let this movie take you on its weird and wild ride. There's definitely faults. There's definitely things I don't like in this movie. I've often joked around in Discord that like when people criticize this movie, I'll be like, yeah, totally agree. Still
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah.
But so
Yeah.
I've
Yeah.
definitely said like I can definitely find fault in this movie, but I can find fault in any Friday movie because none of them are perfect to me. But it's just like let this movie like just see this movie for like what it is almost in a sense and just like let it be the entertaining ride that it's trying and wants to be. And I think you'll have fun with it. And one I guess it looks like sounds like we're sort of wrapping up here, but one last
Hmm.
thing is that like when you watch this for the first time, you can't tell me that ending shot didn't have you absolutely pumped with like fucking Freddy's glove popping out of the sand and dragging the mask.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like you can't tell me that ending
Yeah.
shot was not
Well,
fucking
that's the prelude to
mm.
what was gonna be the Freddy versus Jason
Yeah, because
movie.
when I
But
first saw this, I don't like I said, I don't believe I had watched Nightmare, but I knew who Freddy was. So I was like, "Oh shit, Freddy."
yeah,
Mhm.
yeah.
But yeah, that's I guess that's ultimately why I love this. Just it's such its own thing, and just like I think if you
Hmm.
look at it for what it is, instead of like judging it based on like everything else that this franchise is, and just like let it be entertaining like it wants to be, then I think you'll have much more fun with it. You still might not like it, but I think
Yeah.
it'll definitely be much more fun.
Yeah, no, it's a great take, and I appreciate your opinion. Like I said, I love that you love this movie so much. I think that's awesome. And yeah, like I still I mean, I feel the way I feel about it, but I do agree. I think if you go in and kind of leave all your expectations at the door, and like I said, if like you said it best, if you're going through the franchise already and you come to this movie, like if you're at the point where where this is the one that you're on, you should know by now that things have already gotten ridiculous. So at this
Mhm.
point, I feel like you go in with an open mind and kind of take it for what it is. You can have fun with it. And like I said, there's definitely redeeming qualities to it. I think a lot of the kills are really cool. The practical effects, we talked about them already. Like they're probably the big selling point for me. But yeah, man, I
Yeah.
think I think you could have fun with this movie.
Mhm. I
So
think
at the end of the day,
Jason's design in this movie, like I guess one last little thing. I think it's not like my favorite design, but I think it's a pretty sick. I wish we had
hmm.
gotten this little chrome skull that you see in the poster art
Well,
that you
dude,
found.
that's what I wanted to ask you about that too, because you talk about like misleading advertising or posters, but I remember seeing this movie like in the video store,
Mhm.
and I was like, oh, that's a cool fucking mask, like, and again, it's one of the last Friday the 13th movies that I'd seen. As I said, I'm pretty sure I saw this after Jason X. I remember seeing Jason X in the store as well. For some reason, I remember we watched Jason X before this, and I don't know how that came to be, whatever the case was, but I remember seeing this, the artwork here and there, like when I was younger, and always wondering, like, oh, I gotta watch that. Like, why haven't I seen that one? And the
Yeah.
mask was so fucking cool. It would have been cool to kind of get that mask in the
Mhm.
movie, in
Yeah.
hindsight.
I still have no idea what that is. I would love to have seen it. Like, when
Yeah.
I first found these movies, I thought everything after part 8 until the remake was a fan film
Hmm.
because of just, like, the titles were, like, because it was, like, very neatly Friday the 13th part 1, part 2, part 3, part 4, and it jumps
Right.
from part 8 to, like, Jason Goes to Hell, The Final
Yeah.
Friday,
Yeah.
Jason X. I thought all of them up until the remake were just, like, fan films that had just gotten such a following. I didn't realize that these were, like, actual, like, no, these are legitimate entries.
Hmm.
Yeah, but
Yeah. The first run of films, I think, were definitely more. I'm trying to find the right word. I mean, as far as the titles, they were much more straightforward.
yeah, they feel more
You
neat.
know,
They feel like parts 1 to 8 feel like a very neat little set, which is
yeah,
because they're often sold in the set, and then, like Jason Goes to Hell, Jason X, Freddy vs. Jason, the
yeah.
reboot are all just kinda like these, like, little wacky out there type ideas that they
I
had.
mean, the same argument can probably be made for part five, just because part four was considered. I mean, it was titled the final chapter, but that
Yeah,
being said, yeah, I think it was easier to get by that with five, six, seven, and eight than it is with from eight going to this, because then the titles just get kind of they get
yeah.
crazier. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So
they did. This is
I can
definitely
see
the
that.
craziest title, and I mean, we could talk about part 5 another time, but, like,
Yeah,
big shock, I like part 5. I think
yeah.
I sort of view it as, like, a sleazed up light remake of the first one in a way, but
Hmm.
that's another tangent.
That's a conversation for another day and a different Friday. But
Yeah,
anyway, yeah. So thanks for joining me, man. I
thanks
appreciate
for
your
having
take on this. Appreciate you hanging out and having a quick conversation. Sharing your thoughts with our viewers as to why you like the movie.
Mhm.
But yeah,
Thanks for having me. It's been fun. Always like talking about Friday or any,
yeah, dude. And yeah, if you guys are out there watching this, let us know what you think down below in the comments. Do you like Jason Goes to Hell?
feel free to
Did
call
you
me out on
feel
my
like you were
bullshit.
in hell when you were watching when you're watching it? Did you
Eh,
feel like were you getting PTSD as Nick was talking about it?
Do you want to go
Remembering.
to hell, like,
Yeah.
after you for remembering this movie? Do you want me to go to hell for liking this movie? Feel free to
Nah,
flame me
man. Yeah, we're
as
we're
much
gonna
in the
have you back.
comments.
We love having people on. It's something we're gonna be doing. A
Mm,
lot more, having more community members on. And I was very appreciative. I'm thankful that you're here to join me to talk about it. And
thanks
thanks
for
for
having me on.
yeah, dude. No,
It's
thanks for
been so
taking the
much fun.
time to hang out.
Of course.
And that's pretty much it, folks. Stay tuned for more content. If you like what we do on this channel, you know the deal. Like, subscribe, hit the notification bell. So every time we post content like this, you guys can be notified.
Hit that little bell and that big red subscribe button down on there and turn
Yeah,
the
we're
notifications
we're
on.
wherever it is. I don't even know where they are. I
On a
just say
phone,
it.
I think it's like you swipe up and it's like here. It's like right
Oh,
up here on your phone,
I
I
think it
think.
might be different on the computer. But anyway, yeah, that's it, folks. So thanks for watching. We will see you guys soon.
Peace.